a lot of inspiration I got from you, and I think like many other people. So I would like to know more about pivotal moments in your journey that kind of brought you to the point where you are today, inspiring so many on the raw food journey or consciousness journey, whatever you feel you want to mention.
All right, thank you. I guess it'd probably be good to begin with my background before I got into this lifestyle. So I used to weigh nearly 300 pounds, which is like 133 kilos. And about 8 years ago, I was introduced to the idea of raw food through a book. A friend lent me a book called Raw Family by the Botenkos, who are a very well-known family in the raw foods movement. And I received this book, I started to read it, I couldn't stop, I read the whole book in one night, and the very next day I started on a raw food lifestyle. From being in that 133 kilogram, very unhappy, unhealthy, miserable state, I went totally raw, actually, overnight, completely switched to 100% raw vegan overnight, which was extremely intense in terms of detox and the shifts that I was going through. So I actually took a step back to something like 70 or 80% raw for the first couple of years on my journey, during which time I released 70 something kilos, I had to remember everything in pounds and kilos. In pounds it was like 160 pounds. So that really for me was like the beginning of this whole journey, was like the physical weight loss. And I had no idea about all the other stuff that was going to unfold along the way. And I mean, literally my life is unrecognizable these days from how it used to be. So if you can imagine, on every level of my life possible, things flip-flopped completely. You know, emotionally, socially, psychologically, mentally, financially, romantically, you name it, Lee. Like, my life is unrecognizable. So there have been so many pivotal points along that journey, and really when I look back now at like diaries or something from those old days, I just look at them with shock, you know, like, who wrote this stuff? I was so toxic in my thinking and everything. My entire relationship with life felt extremely toxic and limiting and negative from my perspective now. I didn't realize that at the time, but when I look back now, I'm pretty amazed at the journey that I've been led along.
When you say toxic in your thinking, that brings me to the idea that anything can be food, not only the food we take in as food, like the breakfast we have, but also the thoughts we think and the habits we have, the relationships we surround ourselves by. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I hear you. I resonate with all of that. I wrote a whole book called Raw Emotions, which explores all of these things beyond the physical food, you know, because that's one part of it, you know, calories in, calories out, the stuff that you're actually fueling your body with. And for most people who start on this kind of journey, just like me, there's so much more that unfolds that you maybe had no idea about. You know, it's not just about what you eat, or what you eat can open doorways to so many other things. So yeah, you know, the thoughts that we're feeding ourselves, the ways that we choose to communicate with other people, the words that we use, the media that we expose ourselves to, the forms of creativity that we choose to express ourselves through, the places we choose to live, you know, it goes on and on and on. And when I stepped onto this path, like I said, I had no idea all the other stuff that was going to unfold. And as it did start to unfold, I felt like I was questioning everything in my life, absolutely everything, you know. And I remember feeling like I was starting everything from scratch, and there were a lot of feelings of resentment and bitterness that came up for me around that to work through, you know. All of this stuff came up of why was I never told any of this? Like, what was I doing in school for all of those years, learning about bicarbonate of soda or something, you know, or like Pythagoras' theorem? Like, and there was a lot of like rage coming up around that. A lot of stuff to let go of as I was forging what felt like my own path. You know, of course, other people had walked that path before me, and I started to tap into their work and their resources and get inspiration from other people, and that just felt like lifelines, you know, like, oh, it's not just me, there are other people who are thinking about why do I use this kind of shampoo, and why is this kind of thing on the news every day and not something else, you know. And things usually shift massively for people when they start on this kind of path, and it can feel very disorientating, very awkward, and very draining. So that's especially why I wanted to create a book that went into all of these things to help people feel that maybe they aren't so crazy, you know, maybe they're not the only ones experiencing all these kind of things.
Oh yeah, yeah. And your book Raw Emotions is currently also being translated into Spanish, right?
Yeah.
It will also be available in Spanish and in other languages. Yeah. Yeah, and it's also, as I observed myself, the food that we take in, the physical food, also has a relationship to the consciousness we experience, or the mental state we are in, or the mood, or how grumpy we feel, or happy without reason, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a huge part of the picture. And again, when I look back at those old diaries and I see my thought patterns there written out, I mean, to me those things are very valuable because they show me where I've come from. I don't actually have like any videos necessarily of myself at that time. I often think it would be fascinating to see like a kind of fly on the wall video of me at that time, to see how I actually interacted with people, because it truly feels like a different person. It's like I can't really relate anymore to how I behaved at that point, but I can get glimpses of it in these diaries. And it's shocking, the stuff in these diaries, you know. It's like I was so angry and I was so negative, and if I look at the kind of things I was fueling myself with at that point in terms of physical food, it was all junk food of the craziest order, you know. It was mountains of food every day, thousands and thousands and thousands of calories, primarily processed junky foods. I thought salads were ridiculous, you know. I was eating so much factory farmed meat. Now think about all of the chemicals in all of that food, and all of the antibiotics and the fear hormones in all of those animals that I was eating, and all of that stuff was going into my body and my consciousness, affecting the way that I was choosing to behave with people. You know, to me, absolutely, you know, the things that we choose to fuel ourselves with, there's no question the impact that it has on our behavior. And you know, there's so many wonderful examples of that as well, where maybe in a school where children are particularly disruptive or something, and they go in and they replace the standard foods in those schools with, you know, organic, loved, delightful choices instead, and instantly you'll see turnarounds in those children's behavior. So you know, it's always so laughable to me when doctors tell people, you know, you have this kind of illness, you have this kind of condition, and it's got nothing to do with the way you eat. You can eat whatever you want, and you know, we'll have this surgery lined up for you. And when it, you know, it's completely ridiculous to me that all of those kind of things, and the autism and the ADHD and all of these kind of syndromes that people are labelled with, that has so much to do with the food intake, the vaccines that people are taking, the medications, all of the input that is perhaps other than optimal.